Hi everybody, this is Katie Vandermeer, and the last video was long. I promise you this one will be very short. We're going to cover just finding files in this short video, and we're going to look at two commands, locate and find. There's also a third command in this section called which, and you can read about that. It's not a very useful command, but it does show you or returns something when you're trying to look for it. So you could do like which and then a name of a command, and it will return any value that has any path that has that name in it. So that's at the end of this section. So we'll look at locate and find. First of all, I am currently on, who am I? I am logged in as user 1, and we can use user 1 to search for commands. But if you're searching for commands that user 1 doesn't have permission to look for or to search out a directory, then we'll get comments like permission denied. Now, if you're root, who has permission to everything, then you won't get permission denied messages when you're searching for things if you are logged in or authenticated as root. The thing we'll understand in our next video or two more videos after this is that when we set read permissions on a directory, that gives us the ability to search through a directory. And I don't have all of the permissions as user 1 on certain directories, so sometimes I'll get a denied error message. So the first command we're going to look at is something called locate. Locate is, we could say, what is locate? Locate is a command that finds the files by name. I just used a command called whatis, which is kind of useful to give us a short explanation of what a command does. So locate searches for anything in the system based on what you're looking for, but it only searches through a pre-made database of information. So you can't really use, like we just created these files in our documents directory called file 1 and file 2. You can't use, you can't use locate to find like where is sample 1. So if I want to say where is sample 1, which is .txt, that's not going to work because it's not in this pre-made database. But if you're looking for a system file, such as init tab is a good example, then you could use locate from any place in the file system to look for init tab. And once you hit enter, it searches through this pre-made database and returns any locations where init tab is. So you will see init tab is a file that's in the Etsy directory, and then it's also in the user share AUG UAS lenses distribution init tab. It's also in that directory. It's called inittab.org. And the reason those are returned and not sample 1 is because those are in that database. So system files locate is good for, but if you're looking to find files that you've created or anything else, then you would want to use the find command. So I'm going to go back to my home directory and show you how to use find. Now find has two arguments, and then in between those two arguments you have criteria, which is what am I looking for. So the first example we could do is find Etsy, and then the criteria that I'm going to use, you use a dash and then the criteria. So here I'm going to find, the first argument is where are you going to start looking, and find looks recursively through those directories. So if you did just root, whoops, if you took this Etsy out and just said find root, what you're saying is start at the very top level and search through everything. And that could take a long time. So if you kind of know where something is, it's more helpful. So I want to look in the Etsy directory, and then my criteria is for a name, and then what do I want to find is the last argument, and I want to find anything in the Etsy directory that has a init tab in the name of it. So I'll hit enter then, and it will go through and show me, okay, find, there might be something in the archive directory to back up the cache, but you can see permission denied. This is the only one that I can access in the Etsy init tab. There's a file there. So that that one was returned, but those other ones permission denied. That means that on those directories, I don't have the ability to search through those directories. So I don't know if the file's in there or not because I don't have the search permission. Now, if I was root, it would just go through that, search it. If anything's in there, it's returned. But right now, I'm logged in as user 1. So I could super user or sudo over to root. And I don't know if I typed my password correctly. Nope. There we go. And run the same command, which was find, and then in the Etsy directory, something, searching with the criteria name, and I want to search for the name of init tab. And it goes through, searches everything, and returns this location of where this file is located. Now, it searched through all those other directories. Nothing was there, so nothing was returned. But when I was authenticated as user 1, I got an error message because I don't have that permission. So on page 145 of your textbook, there is a list of the different criteria that you can use with the find command based on what it is that you're looking for. So if you want to look for files that were last accessed a certain amount of time ago, you could use the a minute, and then the -x would be like files that were last created in the access in the last 120 minutes or something like that, or days for a time, or empty files and directories. Now just imagine if you were a system administrator and you were cleaning up your file structure and wanted to remove directories or files that had nothing in them. You could use that find command with the empty and it would return files or directories that have size 0. Let's give that one a try. So we know we have files in the user 1's home directory, which is, where am I currently? I'm currently in my user 1 home directory, but I'm authenticated as root. Now, if I were authenticated as user 1, I'll go back to user 1. It would work the same way because user 1 has the permission to do whatever they want in this location, in their home directory here. So I know that I have files that are empty, so I'm going to search for that. I'm going to say, let's see, I've not done this one yet, so we'll say find, and then we want to give it a starting spot. I'm going to just use the relative path, and I want to look into this documents directory. So I'll say, whoops, find, and then in documents, and what do I want to look for? Anything that's empty. Now, this example with empty doesn't have a third argument because you don't have to supply it a name. But look at, you can see that everything that has 0 size, this thing called old work, which is a directory, is empty. Shell scripts is empty. This file is empty. That file's empty. All of this stuff is empty. So if I were a system administrator and I was cleaning up systems that you didn't need, then I would just use that command, and now I can know where all of this stuff is that's taking up space or not being used, and I can clear it all out. Because even the file name itself, it's empty, but it does take up space and a little bit as far as the file name, and it just clutters up your system. So that find is much more useful than what locate does, because it actually kind of searches through your structure to see things. Another example of find, you would use, let's see, we did the, if you were searching for init tab, you could use find. We did that one already, I think. Find and then start in Etsy. Look for anything that has a init tab in it. And again, it will search through everything and return that. I'm back at user 1, so I get some permission denied. You can use wildcards too with this. So if you were doing something like, let's see, let's go over to here. If you wanted to use the asterisk and search for anything, like here's a good example. Find any file, this means find any file with the name that begins with the name host, and then the wildcard meta character, the asterisk, means anything that comes after that HOST. So it has that name. So here it responds host, host.allow, host.config, host name, anything that has that in there. Now we could use that on our system using that wildcard by doing anything that has the name file in there. So we could do find, let's start in our documents directory again, and we want to do the name of anything that has file, and then I'll put my asterisk there, and then end my quote to do my search. Oh, there's double quotes there. Oh, but my error. Let's fix my errors. I have double quotes, and then documents isn't in the root directory. I want to look for where I currently am. So I didn't need to put that / there. That was just a mistake. So here now, file 1, 2, and 3 was returned because I used the meta character. Again, very useful when you're searching for where you're storing files. And another example you could do is searching for size. So this goes back to that page 145, and size is another very common argument that you can, or criteria that you can use with the find command. So in this example, I'm saying find anything that is in the var directory, which is off root, and my criteria is the size, and I want to find anything that has a greater size of 4096 kilobytes. And in this example, again, I get permission to die. Let me go back over to root so we can actually see what we're getting to. SU root. This is good reminder when you're doing your homework. Super user 1 is different permissions than root, and when you're doing things like find, you don't always have those permissions as a regular user. So if you get the errors or something that you don't expect, check who you're authenticated as. So here we go. This gave us a lot more information because there's probably a lot of files that are greater than 4096 kilobytes. There they all are. Now, if you don't want to use the scroller, you can't, then you could run that command and use the pipe more command. And this does one page at a time. So then you can hit enter or the space bar to go through that data, and you can see all of the files that are greater than that size. Likewise, if you want to do something and remove any files that are really small, you could use the minus and just something like that. Any file that's less than 40K, which is a pretty small file, you can see there in the var directory, there's a whole bunch of data, probably text files, so you don't want to go deleting all those, but you can see how this command could be very useful. So if you get a large piece of data, use the pipe.more. That's all you need to know about using locate and find. Remember, there's that which command in there too. Just a quick example of how that works. Which, and then you use it with any command. Which locate, and any place that locate is in a variable called in a system variable, a path variable, then that's returned. So which who or which any command, and it will show us where ls is listed. So in this case, which responded that ls is an alias, and also it's in the user bin ls directory, which is the actual executable. But that one's not as useful as locate and find. So enjoy. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.